In this podcast episode, historian John Lisle delves deep into the shadowy world of MKUltra, the CIA's infamous mind control program. Drawing on newly uncovered documents, including verbatim depositions from the 1980s, Lisle offers a comprehensive and nuanced exploration of the origins, operations, and legacy of MKUltra, dispelling myths while exposing the tragic human cost behind the secretive experiments. Lisle's research is grounded in a trove of previously inaccessible materials, notably over a dozen verbatim depositions from key figures involved in MKUltra, such as Sydney Gottlieb, Robert Lashbrook, and CIA Director Richard Helms. These transcripts provide rare insight into the motivations, methods, and internal justifications of the program's architects. Lisle emphasizes the historian's excitement at having access to direct dialogue, which allows a more vivid understanding of the personalities and rationales behind MKUltra. Tracing the CIA's interest in mind control back to the 1940s and 1950s, Lisle highlights several pivotal events that spurred the program's creation. Early behavioral conditioning experiments by Ivan Pavlov in the 1890s planted the conceptual seeds, as the CIA speculated that if dogs could be conditioned, humans might be similarly manipulated. The Moscow show trials, where political prisoners confessed to false charges under suspicious circumstances, raised fears that mind control techniques such as drugs or hypnosis were at play. Most crucially, during the Korean War, American pilots captured by enemy forces made bizarre confessions about germ warfare, which the CIA suspected were the result of coercive mind control. These incidents collectively ignited the agency's drive to understand and potentially harness mind control techniques. Sydney Gottlieb, a bioorganic chemist with a PhD from Caltech, was appointed head of MKUltra. Lisle paints Gottlieb as an outsider within the CIA, partly due to his physical disabilities and stutter, but also because of his interest in spirituality and psychedelics, including frequent use of LSD. Gottlieb's background and personality set him apart from the typical CIA officer of the era, yet his scientific brilliance and personal connection with CIA head Alan Dulles, who shared a similar physical disability, helped him rise to prominence. Before MKUltra's formal launch in 1953, the CIA experimented with earlier programs such as Bluebird and Artichoke, which focused primarily on developing truth drugs and exploring hypnotism. These programs involved questionable experiments, including hypnotizing secretaries and testing the limits of suggestion. However, these efforts were limited in scope and often plagued by doubts about their efficacy. MKUltra expanded the scope dramatically, encompassing 149 subprojects that went far beyond drugs to include sensory deprivation, electric shocks, and psychic driving, a technique involving the repeated playback of recorded messages to patients in an attempt to erase and reprogram their minds. One of the more bizarre subprojects involved implanting electrodes in animals' brains to remotely control their movements, with the CIA envisioning animal assassination drones carrying biological or chemical weapons. Although these experiments never reached operational deployment, they underscore the program's audacity and ethical bankruptcy. LSD became the hallmark drug of MKUltra, prized for its potency and ease of covert administration. Lisle traces LSD's discovery by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in 1938 and its accidental psychoactive revelation in 1943. The CIA's interest was fueled by fears that the Soviets might weaponize hallucinogens, especially after a mass poisoning incident in a French town caused by ergot fungus-contaminated bread, which led to bizarre and violent behavior among the population. The CIA procured LSD from pharmaceutical companies, including Sandoz and Eli Lilly, and experimented extensively with dosing both themselves and unwitting subjects. Gottlieb and his colleagues often dosed themselves and others as pranks, sometimes with tragic consequences, such as the death of Frank Olson, a scientist who suffered a psychotic break after being dosed at a CIA retreat and later died after falling from a hotel window. One of the darkest chapters involved Operation Midnight Climax, where CIA narcotics officer George White orchestrated covert LSD dosing of unwitting individuals, often in brothels staffed by prostitutes who administered the drugs while White observed behind one-way mirrors. White's personal life was as chaotic and unethical as his professional one, with numerous accounts of him dosing friends and strangers alike, sometimes with devastating psychological effects. MKUltra's reach extended into universities, prisons, and psychiatric hospitals, often funding researchers who were already conducting drug and psychological experiments, sometimes without their knowledge of CIA involvement. Many subjects were prisoners or psychiatric patients who were given hallucinogens, subjected to sensory deprivation, or exposed to electric shocks without proper informed consent. Lisle recounts harrowing stories of patients reduced to near vegetative states, such as those subjected to Ewan Cameron's psychic driving and depatterning techniques at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Cameron, ironically, had been involved in evaluating Nazi war criminals for trial, but flagrantly violated ethical standards in his own experiments. Despite the brutality and scale of these experiments, MKUltra failed to produce the kind of mind control the CIA had hoped for. Gottlieb himself admitted that while they could make people appear insane or induce amnesia, they could not create programmable marionettes. The program's operational successes were limited, with a few attempts to use LSD to discredit foreign leaders, such as a failed plot to dose the president of the Philippines. Lisle addresses the many conspiracy theories that have grown around MKUltra, including claims of mind-controlled assassins and widespread abuse. He stresses that much of this is unsubstantiated and fueled by the destruction of many MKUltra files by Gottlieb and Helms upon their retirement, which created a vacuum filled by speculation. Lisle debunks popular associations of MKUltra with figures like Ted Kaczynski and Charles Manson, noting a lack of direct evidence linking them to the program. He also discusses the psychological mechanisms of cult control, which, unlike MKUltra's drug and hypnosis experiments, have proven more effective in manipulating individuals through behavior, information, thought, and emotion control. This contrast highlights the limits of chemical and technological mind control. The program's secrecy was maintained through extreme compartmentalization within the CIA, lack of oversight, and a culture of plausible deniability. Congressional investigations in the 1970s, including the Church Committee and Rockefeller Commission, exposed MKUltra's abuses, leading to lawsuits and settlements, though no one was held criminally accountable. The tragic deaths and lifelong suffering of many victims remain a dark stain on the CIA's history. John Lisle concludes by reflecting on the ironies of MKUltra, a program that failed in its stated goals, yet became a symbol of mind control in popular culture and conspiracy lore. He emphasizes the importance of rigorous historical research to separate fact from fiction and to honor the victims' experiences. Looking ahead, Lisle plans to shift his focus from intelligence history to the history of science, exploring adventurous scientific expeditions filled with danger and discovery, promising another engaging narrative grounded in meticulous research.